That's exactly right, Rocky. And I guess, something that was pointed out to me recently, which I think just tells the whole story, is that Tennessee, when you think of business locating in a state, all of us think, well, wouldn't it be nice to have an automobile manufacturing facility? There's 4 plants in Tennessee that are auto manufacturers. 2 have located in Alabama. 2 have located in Mississippi. GM's built a plant in Louisiana, and BMW has built a plant in South Carolina. But not one automotive company has chosen to come to North Carolina. And so I just think that tells the story that North Carolina is not a place that business wants to come right now. We used to be considered sort of the crown jewel of the Southeast in business development, and that's deteriorated some over the last decade.
Certainly retirees have wanted to come to North Carolina for its beauty, from the mountains to the coast, the wonderful climate, the low income tax that we have in the state of North Carolina compared to other states, say perhaps in the Northeast. So it's been an area that people at least want to live part-time. You think we can make it a better state for businesses to want to be here full-time, and perhaps even bringing new citizens in as well?
Well, I think that raises a good point, is that 4 auto companies didn't go to Tennessee because they had better beaches than North Carolina or better mountains. It's not because we don't have good employees, because we do, and it's not because we don't have beautiful scenery, because we have that. So I think you've got to look at other factors in North Carolina and just ask the question, why is business going to Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina, but it's not coming here?
Okay. Once again, my guest is Warren Daniel. He is a Republican seeking the North Carolina Senate seat, currently held by Jim Jackman. And education. Let's talk a little bit about education, then we'll take a break after that. We're not the only state which is facing difficulties in education, and now it's financing education, being able to get the budget under control and provide the proper education. As you look at education, what are some of the obstacles to a quality education you see the state of North Carolina has to overcome?
Well, I think in the whole country, one of the things we face is the breakdown in the family, and the number of single-parent homes that exist nowadays. And we don't live in the Leave It to Beaver age anymore, and schools have to deal with a lot more social problems than they did in the past. Probably a lot more disciplinary problems than they have done in the past, and teachers have maybe a more difficult and a different role than they have had in the past. I guess I'm not sure exactly what you're asking me specifically. We do need to improve our education system. We need to do things more efficiently, and we need to find where waste is in education. We need to find administrative areas that maybe are in Raleigh that we can do without. Just as an example, the state of Utah spends somewhere around $6,000 a student on their education, and yet they're ranked in the middle of the pack compared to the other 50 states. North Carolina, at least in our district, we spend approximately $10,000 per student, and we're ranked, closer to the bottom. So I think that's the good thing about federalism, is you can look at other states and you can see how do they do things, and how can we pick up some ideas and maybe do things better.
Wow. That's eye-opening to think that the disparity in the amount of money spent. So perhaps we're just not targeting the areas we should with the funds that we do have. What I'm hearing perhaps is that we are adequately funded. We just need to make sure we're getting the best bang for our buck for our students and our teachers and administrators.
Well, I think there's been a mentality in government that the more you spend, the better quality you get, regardless of whether it's education or highways or whatever the issue is. And I think that that's just a fallacy that we've got to lay aside. And really this just gets back to that government needs to run like a business. Business people, when they're running their business, they are trying to figure out what's the smartest way I can do this, what's the cheapest way I can create a quality product, where can I cut in my budget, because they want to have a better bottom line for their company and for their shareholders. And state government just doesn't have that mentality.
Warren Daniel is our guest. He, once again, is seeking the Senate seat for North Carolina. He's Republican, and we'll take a break. It is 18 minutes past 8 o'clock, and we'll be back after this. You're listening to Caldwell This Morning. It is coming up on 20 minutes past 8 o'clock. Welcome back once again to Caldwell This Morning. I'm Rocky Brooks, and joining me is Republican for North Carolina Senate seat, held currently by Jim Jackman. He is retiring from that position, will not seek re-election. It is not seeking re-election. Warren Daniel is. And Warren, let's talk about you, the person. Who is Warren Daniel? How can the audience get to know you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, Rocky, I grew up in Morganton. I was active in scouting. I became an Eagle Scout. I played varsity baseball. I graduated from Freedom High School. After that, I was received a commission or a appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point from then Congressman Cass Ballinger. I graduated in 1991 from the academy and was commissioned as a lieutenant in the United States Army, and I served on active duty in the Army for 6 years. And after that time, I decided I wanted to come back to North Carolina and attend law school, so I went to UNC Chapel Hill and graduated in 2000, and I've been practicing law ever since then in our family firm in Morganton. We've had the privilege of serving clients from both Caldwell and Burke counties for the last 10 years. As far as my family life, I married my wife Lydia at the West Point Cadet Chapel, and we've been married for 17 years. We have three daughters. My wife's a homeschool mom, and she loves doing that. In our church life, we're members of Burkemont Baptist Church in Morganton, where I'm a deacon, and my wife serves as the leader of the Awana program.
Have you been involved in the civic organizations or activities or organizations giving back to the community in Burke County? If so, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I guess just going back a little bit farther, I served my country for 6 years. During that time, my wife and I got interested in children's ministry. We worked in the RA's program in a Baptist church in Georgia when I was stationed at Fort Stewart. And since that time, we've always had an interest in children's ministry. We're very active in our church, Burkemont Baptist. That's probably where we spend most of our civic time. We both work in the Awana program, which is It's a program that encourages children to learn Bible verses, and it also has recreational aspects to it. I've been a basketball coach in our church children's basketball league a couple years, and those are the type of things we enjoy mostly as far as our civic involvement. I also have been involved in local politics for several years. I was the chairman of the Burke County Republican Party for 4 years, and we've had a good time just meeting a lot of candidates along the way and trying to work hard to get some conservative people in offices across the state and in our county.
Tell me about being at West Point. Some of the things you learned about leadership, discipline. Can you share some of that experience with us, and also serving in the military?
Well, I think one of the things that you are taught most in the military is that you have to lead by example. You have to, and shoe shining is just a simplistic example. If you want your subordinates to have shiny shoes, you need to shine yours. I know that sounds trivial, but it applies really it applies to leadership across the board, not just in a military environment, but in business, in life. And I think that a lot of times, even in politics, there's legislators that expect the citizens of North Carolina to make sacrifices that they're not willing to make, and that just gets back to you need to lead by example.
Okay. All right. So if you ask others to do that, then either you need to be there yourself or perhaps be amongst those at the front of the line leading the way as well.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. How was the experience at West Point and being near Newburgh?
Are you familiar with Newburgh?
Oh, very. Not a West Point cadet, but yeah, I used to live near that area.
Well, Newburgh's not my favorite town, but West Point is a beautiful place, and Highland Falls is a beautiful place. It's in the wintertime, it's a little gray because all the leaves fall, and there's not evergreen trees as much as like there are down here. So all you see is the gray stone, and so that's why they call it the rock-bound Highland home. Probably the toughest thing about West Point is that the schedule is relentless. Every day, week after week, year after year, you basically are up at 5:30 and you go to bed at midnight, and it's just, there's activities, academics, intramurals, parades, formations, and things that are just packed into that time, week after week, month after month, year after year.
Now, when you got out and you got into the military, now in your civilian life, have parts of what you learned at West Point, have they transformed into your daily life here? I mean, do you carry some of that with you still?
Oh, sure. The principles of duty, honor, and country are instilled in you when you go through an experience like that. I'm a very patriotic person, and to this day, duty, honor, and country are very important to me. I am a very patriotic person. I believe we need to support our military. I have friends today that are serving overseas and who go back and forth in various branches, whether it's special forces or infantry. And I'm concerned about them, obviously, from a safety perspective, but I'm also appreciative of the sacrifice that they make in the time away from their family.
All right. I want to go back to one you mentioned about government run like a business. Some people will disagree. There are others. I actually think a majority of citizens who are not involved in government would say it should be run like a business. Businesses have to be held accountable. Can you expand just a little bit on your philosophy of running government like a business?
Well, let me just give you an example. The two jobs I've had in my life were basically working for the U.S. Army, which is one of the biggest organizations you could ever think of, and then in a small law firm in Morganton. So I've seen sort of both sides of the coin. When I was in the military as an executive officer, you have an annual budget, and you get towards the end of the year, and they start saying, have we spent all our money? Because we need to, so that next year they'll give us at least that much or more. And so then you start looking for ways to spend money, not necessarily on things you need, but on things that you can possibly use in the future so that you can justify your next year's budget. And so I think that that's just a mentality that we've got to figure out a way to curtail that so that we're not concerned about, an agency should not be concerned about, am I going to get as much or more next year? If we can do it with less, we need to do it with less. And I knew in the Army, there was times when we could do with less.
You've seen it in everyday life as well.
Sure. And, of course, in a business, every year you decide, what kind of advertising are we going to do this year? Are we going to spend more? Are we going to spend less? And you decide what you can afford. And that's just something you do on an annual basis.
And this is the scrutiny that perhaps government itself needs, other than just raising taxes and saying, hey, we'll pay for it through the citizens.
Well, yeah, I see that as the equivalent of, the employee going to his boss every year and not asking for a raise, but demanding it. And that's what, when legislators pass a tax increase, they just say, guess what, you're going to give me more money out of your wallet this year. And I think we've got to, I just don't think that that's fair to the taxpayer. And not only is it not fair, that just gets back to the business environment. And when you create the highest tax burden in the Southeast, then that's a discriminator when businesses are choosing, are we going to go to Georgia, are we going to go to South Carolina, are we going to go to Texas? I mean, one of the best examples I've heard of this is if you look at the two states of Texas and California. Well, in California, high income tax equals bankruptcy. In Texas, no income tax equals surplus. So, there's two states that obviously have different philosophies and are having different results.
All right. I'm going to leave. I got a minute and a half to go. I'm going to leave this time for you. You can talk to our listeners and anything that you'd like to say to them.
Well, thank everybody for listening. I thank Rocky for letting me come on the show today. And I guess as we sit here today, I feel like the American dream and our traditional Judeo-Christian values are in jeopardy. I recently read a letter to the editor, and a gentleman said, the America I grew up in is not the America that we live in today. And I think if we continue down this road of excessive spending as a state and as a nation, our children are not going to be able to grow up in the land of opportunity that we had. Like never before, all of us need to elect leaders who will not only hold the line on taxes and spending, but who will seek to preserve the godly heritage of our nation. I'm Warren Daniel. I've served our country, and now I would like to serve the citizens of Burke and Caldwell counties. I would add that I'm pro-life. I'm endorsed by the North Carolina Right to Life, and I have an A rating from the National Rifle Association. So I would ask for your vote and for your support in the North Carolina Senate. And God bless our state, and may God bless America.
Warren Daniel, he's a Republican for the North Carolina Senate seat, the state Senate seat. And I thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you, Rocky. I've enjoyed it.
And coming up, Ron Bean, who is a commissioner, sitting commissioner of Caldwell County, seeking re-election as Democrat.